Welcome to Introduction to Whitebox Learning Engineering Lower Profile. So today we're going to now work with the lower profile. We've already created the blank setup. We've already done an upper profile. So now we're going to talk about the lower profile and how we work with that. So with what we've done previously, my blank is set up. I have my block out here just like I had. I'm going to turn on my upper profile eye, and this is the profile we just designed from the last one. I'm also, again, like I said in the previous video, make sure your front axle is visible and your rear axle is visible, so we now know how to design. This is more critical now in lower profile than it was in the upper profile before. So now I'm going to go and turn on my lower profile eye. Again, you'll see this line appear. Again, just like in the upper profile, we're going to get rid of that one right away when we start. But that appears right here, and you notice right now it doesn't look right with our card design that we already have going. I'm going to turn on the wrench for lower profile, and the same grid form with the same measurements to length, the same measurements to height appear just like they did in the upper profile. The same tools in this tree appear just like they did in the lower profile. So we still have lines, we have splines, we have curves, we have add a point, we have move a point, and we have delete a point. And we have erase and undo. Now, one thing you want to be aware of is that when we do like in clear right now, it's not going to do anything to our upper profile because we are not using the wrench to upper profile. This now only deals with anything we do in lower profile. So as I hit this, that lower profile, that line that appeared is now gone, and now we can design from scratch again. So again, show you how to design. Very similar to how we did in the upper profile with a few things that you need to know on the lower profile. So I'm going to start with lines. I'm going to add a point. Just like you did up here, you have to make sure that your first point to the left is all the way back to this dotted line, and it has to be below this CO2 cartridge hole. So I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to click a dot right here. And remember also, it has to be within 4 millimeters. So the bottom of my CO2 cartridge opening is about 24. My dot is at 16, so I'm about 8 right now. If I wanted to get closer, I certainly could. And then I'm going to go and now create the rest of my profile as I go through here and do this. Now, one thing we have to be aware of is with our axles here, we need to make sure that the bottom of the car, because this is what we're drawing right here, is the bottom of the car actually goes below the axle. Okay, so we don't have to draw, like the line that existed here before all the way across. We can lift this up and now bring this down below the axle. And when you're below the axle, you want to be all the way down on the dotted line. And my suggestion, just to always make sure that you're safe and you're going to stay within spec, always leave a point behind the axle and create a point ahead of the axle. So now this line right here is going to be below that axle, and make sure these points are on the dotted line. So then this distance from the axle to the line are going to be correct. If this line was up above that dotted line and closer to the axle hole, then it's going to say that it's out of spec and you have to do some changing on your cars. So I'm going to show you how just to verify this to make sure at the end of the drawing. But now at this point, I've got my point behind the axle. I got my point in front of the axle. I can lift it back up again. It doesn't have to be below the axle here because I'm already directly below the axle. That's the only place you have to worry about. And I can now bring it down, and I can come through. And now the only thing I have to worry about is now getting again below this axle. So I come through and I make myself a point behind the axle, and I make myself a point ahead of the axle. And again, making sure my line is all the way down to the dotted line. And if I look at this, it's possible that this dot isn't all the way down. We'll take a look at that in a little bit. And then what you want to do is you want to make sure that you then get over here and connect that point. Okay, so you connect that point. So now you've completed a car all the way around. You do not have to have a line going up and down here. They don't want a line going up and down here, so you don't have to connect these two ends. You just have to connect this end together. And then honestly, you wouldn't even probably have to connect that end together. It'll just make a connection at some point. So as you've got this design, you take a look and say, okay, that's kind of how I like it. If not, you can still move your points like you want and things like that. And notice that I can only deal with, because I'm in the lower profile, I can only work with the lower profile points. If I wanted to go through and redo something in the upper profile, I'd have to apply and done, and then go back and turn on my upper profile and change things in my upper profile, which you can always go back and modify any of these profiles at any time while you're drawing. So a suggestion I want for you is just to make sure that you know that this line is going to be totally below your axle. Notice I'm in move point, and I'm just going to grab this point and pull down. Okay, now watch out when you pull right or your mouse, you pull right or left, but just make sure you pull down. So if I do that, it'll pull all the way to the bottom. I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to pull down. Okay, and I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to pull down. Okay, and I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to pull down. And that one I noticed moved. Okay, so now I know, hey, this is below this. This is below this. So now when I drill a hole in here, I'm actually drilling a hole in the car. That's what we want to do. We want to actually know that we're drilling a hole in the actual dragster block. The other thing now that you probably want just to make a point on, so you know this when we move to the top profile, doesn't matter if you do this in the upper profile or the lower profile, but you want to find out where your upper and lower profiles end. Okay, so our upper and lower profiles are ending at 253 millimeters. So at 253 millimeters is where we're going to want to draw our top profile to end when we talk about that. And you always want to make a note of that number just for that reason, that because we don't want to end up drawing our top profile way out here or drawing our top profile only to here, and then nothing lines up when you put it all together, and it's going to be really confusing. So again, lower profile, stay below the CO2 cartridge and within 4 millimeters. Stay below the back axle, the rear axle, and the front axle. Pull them down at the end just to make sure. And then make sure you know where your ending point of your car or of your dragster is, so then when you do the upper profile, you have a point that you can reference. Thank you for watching. Please proceed with your next steps as assigned by your instructor.